Today, I will recap the story of the 2012 movie, The Odd Life of Timothy Green. A married couple, Cindy and Jim Green, arrives at an adoption agency. The agency's employee, Yvette O'Nat, thoughtfully examines their questionnaire and notices that the Green couple did not answer a question about why they think they are ready to adopt. Mrs. O'Nat warns the couple that they must be completely honest with her so they can be trusted with a child. The excited couple then asks the employee to hear the amazing story of the boy, Timothy, who changed their lives forever. It all began last fall in Dr. Hunt's office. After many attempts at getting pregnant, the couple is told they have no chance of having a baby. Crushed by this news, the Greens were forced to give up all hope and return to their ordinary life in the town of Stanleyville, called the pencil capital of the world. Cindy works at the local museum, and Jim works at the town's historic pencil factory, which is going through tough times. Returning home after a day's work, the couple barely speaks, trying to get over their grief. In the evening, Jim hears Cindy crying in the bathroom and realizes that he can no longer do nothing. He convinces his wife to imagine their ideal child and endow it with the character traits and abilities that are inherent to themselves. Having gotten a taste for it, the couple begins to fantasize that their baby will be honest, have a great sense of humor, be able to draw like Picasso, and be a star on stage. And although his parents don't excel in sports, their ideal child will one day be able to score a game-winning goal. After writing down their fantasies on sheets of notebook paper, the Greens put them in a wooden box and bury them in their backyard. At night, when the couple is already asleep, a strong wind picks up outside. It soon develops into a thunderstorm, which wakes Jim up. Closing the front door tightly, the man peeks into the refrigerator for some milk. Suddenly, he notices some movement in the kitchen but mistakes it for a shadow. Back in bed, he hugs his wife and wishes her good night. At that moment, Cindy comes out of the bathroom, and Jim realizes that a stranger has entered their bedroom. The intruder immediately jumps out of bed, leaving behind muddy footprints. The frightened couple investigates the house in search of the stranger and discovers that he has smeared dirt on their wedding photo. In one of the empty rooms, they find a boy completely covered in dirt. The 10-year-old introduces himself as Timothy and asks the Greens to wash him. While Cindy prepares the boy's bath, Jim decides to report the found child to the police. Suddenly, he notices something in the window that makes him hang up the phone. He runs into the bathroom, where his alarmed wife shows him an incredible discovery. There are real leaves growing on Timothy's feet, but the boy is in no hurry to tell him how they got there. Jim asks Cindy to go out into the yard, where another surprise awaits her. The woman discovers the box shredded into pieces around a large hole in the ground where they buried their wishes. The police arrive at the Greens' house, concerned about Jim's midnight call. The man lies to the officers about mistaking a raccoon family for a burglar. The meticulous law enforcement officers are surprised by the wet ground in the Greens' yard and ask them to supervise the watering. It turns out that the downpour was only over their house, which adds to the bizarreness of what's going on. Cindy and Jim give Timothy clothes and tell the boy their names. However, the unusual child prefers to call them his parents. The shocked couple realizes that the boy who has come to them may be the perfect child they envisioned. The Greens decide to keep Timothy and raise him as their own son. In the morning, the family wakes up to the doorbell ringing. With all the events, they had completely forgotten about the arrival of their in-laws and did not have time to prepare for meeting them. In their haste, the new parents put long socks on Timothy to hide his peculiarity. They also ask the boy not to tell the guests the truth about where he came from. At the family picnic, the couple announces to the surprised relatives that they have adopted a child. Friendly Timothy immediately begins to get to know his parents. Family members Brenda Best, Cindy's pretentious sister, Grandpa Big Jim, who has a strained relationship with his son, funny Uncle Bob, and Aunt Mel, who raised the boy's mother. Grandpa Green, who is obsessed with competition, challenges the kids to play dodgeball. The parents are very worried about Timothy, for he has never played the game before and is unable to dodge Grandpa's hard throws. Observing the boy's strange behavior during the game, Brenda warns her sister that the adopted child may be sick with something. The sun appears in the sky from behind the clouds, and Timothy spreads his arms out to the side as if soaking up every warm ray of light. Suddenly, his attention is drawn to a beautiful girl riding her bicycle past their yard. Because of this, he does not notice the ball flying in his direction and takes the hit. Big Jim happily states that the last player is out of the game. This part of the story embarrasses Mrs. Onat since the parents did not have any reaction to what Green Sr. did. Jim explains that he couldn't stand up to his father then but wanted to be a better parent to his child than he was. Cindy, on the other hand, wanted Timothy to be no different from the other children and to have an ordinary childhood. With these considerations in mind, the parents took the boy to their friend and urban botanist, Reggie. They asked the expert to cut off the leaves on Timothy's legs so that he could become an ordinary child. However, when Reggie tried to cut off a leaf from the boy's leg with scissors, the vegetation immediately returned to its place. Accepting that the leaves cannot be removed, his parents send Timothy to school. Bernice Crudstaff, Cindy's strict boss, reprimands her subordinate for being late and looking sloppy. Green decides to share her joy and tells the woman about Timothy, but her boss is not interested in her personal life. Things aren't going smoothly for Jim at work either. His boss, Franklin Crudstaff, nephew of the museum owner, informs the workers of possible layoffs due to the factory's financial problems. In the middle of the workday, the Green couple is called to school. It turns out that school bullies have smeared leftover food on Timothy's face, calling it an art project. After learning that he has been bullied by Franklin's children, Jim arrives at his boss's house to defend his son's honor. The conflict concludes when the bully's mother invites Timothy to a pool party for a birthday party, and he happily agrees. On the day of the party, Timothy hesitantly climbs over the diving board, preparing to jump into the pool. He spots Joni Jerome, the same beautiful girl he saw outside his house among the guests. To impress his classmate, he finally decides to make the jump and plunges to the bottom of the pool. It turns out that the boy can't swim, and no one present notices that he hasn't surfaced in a long time. Joni decides to jump into the water, following Timothy, and swims right up to him. The excited boy thinks his classmate wants to kiss him and closes his eyes in anticipation. Seizing the moment, the girl tries to pull Timothy's socks off and is surprised to find leaves on his leg. Terrified that Joni will find out his secret, he kicks her in the head. When his parents pick Timothy up from the party, he tells them about the incident at the pool. Jim advises his son to run away from Joni the next time he sees her. The innocent boy does so and runs away from the girl. When they encounter each other in the woods, Joni catches up with Timothy and shows him her peculiarity, a large birthmark above her breast, which makes her very embarrassed. Their shared secrets bring the children closer, and they begin to spend a lot of time together. The boy's parents are concerned about their friendship because they think the estranged Joni might be bad company for their son. The happy Timothy returns home after a walk with his new friend. He notices one of the 8 leaves falling off his leg. The boy decides to conceal it from his parents and hides the leaf in an envelope, which he signs with Joni's name. In the evening, the Green family arrives at the hospital where Uncle Bob has been taken. Unfortunately, he is too old and has called his relatives to say goodbye. At Bob's bedside, the family reminisces about the happy times they spent together. The man tells Cindy about her mother, who was a great artist. She never got around to painting a portrait of her daughter before an insidious illness devastated her. The uncle's story makes the family sad, and they walk out into the hallway, leaving Timothy alone with a sick man. The boy asks questions about the old man's life with interest, eliciting genuine laughter from him. Soon he notices that another blackened leaf has fallen out of his pants. Suddenly, Jim notices through the window the startled look in his son's eyes. Uncle Bob begins to gasp and soon retreats to a better world. The parents then decide to take Timothy to soccer so he can take his mind off the loss. Seeing the boy's frail physique, the coach is at first reluctant to take him to the team, but eventually, the Greens manage to talk him into it. However, Timothy's athletic training leaves much to be desired, and he never hits the ball at practice. Later, Joni joins the boy on her bicycle to support him as he runs. At home, a serious conversation awaits Timothy. Jim tries to work out his son's moves while also giving him a lecture about girls. According to his parents, the boy should find himself another friend. However, during the lecture, Jim recalls that in his youth, he also had a crush on a strange girl who later became his wife. While things are getting better at home for the Greens, some problems arise. At work, Jim's boss calls him into his office and hands him a list of employees who are subject to the first wave of downsizing. Franklin doesn't want to take responsibility and break the bad news to the employees, so he orders a subordinate to do it for him. At home, Jim loses his appetite because of guilt. After firing his friends, Cindy and Timothy support the man by having a candlelight dinner. Jim excitedly tells his son about his job and the importance of pencils in his life. He shows the boy a notebook of his work, in which he has drawn prototypes of stationery. Timothy suggests that his parents team up and create a new pencil to help save the factory. Even though the idea seemed unfeasible, the Greens couldn't say no to a child who believes in them so much. For several nights in a row, they developed a unique prototype pencil made from leaves. Once over lunch, they were finally able to present the unusual invention to their son, proving that he didn't believe in them for nothing. On Monday, the city's parents had to bring their children to work. First, Timothy visits his mother at the museum, which is celebrating its anniversary. On this occasion, the staff presented Bernice Crudstaff with a portrait of her. The enthusiastic exclamations of her subordinates do not impress her boss too much, so she asks Timothy for her opinion of the painting. The boy does not know the woman, so he is not afraid of her at all and tells her an uncomfortable truth. He offers to paint a portrait of Mrs. Crudstaff for free, in which she would look authentic. After handing Timothy the drawing supplies, the woman sits in her usual stern pose in the chair. The young artist decides to make adjustments to Mrs. Crudstaff's appearance. He removes her glasses and unravels her beautiful locks of hair. As he finishes his drawing, another leaf falls off his leg. Cindy looks at her son's work with admiration, marveling at his talent. However, the honest boy draws one detail that her boss is not supposed to see. Mrs. Crudstaff impatiently takes the portrait from Timothy. Inspecting the drawing, she is unable to contain her delight until her gaze rests on that very detail. There are a few dark hairs on the woman's chin. After this, the boss decides to summon her subordinates to tell them the whole truth, which they have been keeping from her. Out of fear, Cindy takes on this mission and criticizes Bernice's outfits and her bad sense of humor. She also does not forget to mention her resentment of Mrs. Crudstaff when she did not congratulate her on Timothy's appearance. In the end, Cindy crosses the line and is fired. Although things are not going well at the factory, Jim brings in his son. Thanks to Timothy, he is filled with confidence and decides to go to his boss with a proposal. He shows Franklin the leaf pencil prototype and tries to explain his idea to him, but the boss quickly loses interest in it. A confused Jim leaves the pencil in his office and leaves with nothing. The parents come to their son's first soccer game. Big Jim joins them to watch his grandson play. The man soon discovers that Timothy is just serving drinks and leaves disappointed. In the meantime, the boy helps the team and shouts motivational phrases along with the coach. Late fall arrives. Timothy collects the fallen leaves from the trees and takes them to his friend. The children still spend hours together, enjoying nature in each other's company. A worried Cindy decides to take a desperate step and follows Joni all the way to the woods. After catching up with the girl, she tells her to stop communicating with her son so as not to get him into trouble. Joni ignores the woman's words and walks deep into the woods. Following her, Cindy is surprised to discover the children's secret hiding place. With the help of leaves and tree branches, they have created a wonderful and beautiful world in which they were comfortable. The woman realizes that she was wrong about Joni and no longer forbids her to communicate with Timothy. Jim anxiously watches another of his son's soccer games, which the boy spends on the bench. Big Jim leaves again in the middle of the match, disappointed that his grandson has not succeeded in sports. Meanwhile, Brenda brags about her gifted children, ignoring Cindy's words about Timothy's accomplishments. Unable to stand it, Mrs. Green lies to her sister about her son's ability to play musical instruments. Upon learning this, Brenda invites the family to a musical performance. After gathering an audience in their home, Brenda's children perform a demonstration concert. The hostess happily receives enthusiastic applause and sneeringly announces the next performer, Timothy. The boy boldly approaches the musical instruments to see what he is good at. His choice stops at the cowbell and he starts tapping out a rhythm. Jim picks up the beat and gets on stage too, starting to hum the song. Cindy supports her boys and begins to dance along with them. The Greens' performance causes the audience to be perplexed, but the happy family doesn't notice. Upon returning home, Timothy's parents arrive in joyous euphoria at the way they rocked the stage. In the meantime, their son sadly discovers another wilted leaf in his bed. The day of the final game arrives. Big Jim wants to leave before the game even begins, but Jim convinces him to stay for Timothy's sake. The coach refuses to let the boy on the field until one of the forwards is injured. The Greens realize this is their chance and begin to act. Jim turns to the referee, asking him to insist that the coach replace the injured player with Timothy. The man grudgingly agrees and tells the boy to stand his ground for the rest of the game. The parents, on the other hand, ask their son to go on the attack. When the sun comes out from behind the clouds, Timothy soaks up its warm energy again. When he opens his eyes, he notices Joni, who is actively cheering for her friend. She inspires the boy to intercept the ball, and he goes on the offensive. The happy Cindy proudly points to Brenda at her son, and Jim brags about him to his father. Finally, the moment of truth arrives, and Timothy scores the winning goal. A frustrated sigh is sent through the stands. It turns out that the boy has scored against his own goal. At home, the couple quarrels in earnest over the failure of the match. They accuse each other of using their son to fulfill their unfulfilled desires. Through him, Timothy finds a new yellowed leaf in his soccer sock. The boy is upset by his parents' quarrel and asks them to stop. Mrs. Arnott interrupts the couple's story and tells them that their time is up. However, they refuse to leave until they have told their story to the end. The woman agrees to give them some more time. At the school party, Brenda carefully serves Timothy food and asks him not to worry about the match. The boy introduces Joni to his parents and introduces her as the coolest girl in the world. Thanks to her friendship with Timothy, Joni no longer hides her birthmark from everyone. As the children go out for a walk, the Greens remember how they wished their perfect child would learn to love and be loved. Unable to help themselves, the parents decide to follow the loving couple outside. Timothy tells Joni the truth about his destiny, and the girl begins to cry. The Greens witness the children's touching farewell embrace. When their son approaches them, they apologize for following and wonder why he broke up with his girlfriend. Timothy replies that he let Joni go, but the adults will not understand the reason for his action. Jim sadly tells the agency employee that they will soon realize what the boy was talking about. At a town meeting, the question of closing the pencil factory is being decided. The workers are protesting and asking their bosses not to deprive them of the job they have worked for half their lives. The factory owner tells the crowd that they have found a solution to keep the business viable. He presents the prototype leaf pen to the audience and calls it his son Franklin Crudstaff's invention. To a flurry of applause, Jim's boss takes the stage, but Timothy accuses the man of stealing the idea. He tells him that his parents actually invented the pencil. Franklin accuses the boy of lying and mocks his failure at the soccer game. Jim stands up for Timothy and threatens his boss with reprisal if he insults his son one more time. To everyone's surprise, Big Jim joins him. Bernice asks her nephew how he came up with the idea for the leaf pencil. Franklin is at a loss for words, but he never comes up with a plausible version. Mrs. Crudstaff then asks the Green family a similar question. Cindy answers that they were inspired by the leaves growing on their son's feet. Bernice doubts her subordinate's honesty, but her words are confirmed by Reggie. In the end, Timothy exposes his legs so that those present believe his parents. Though the boy is left with a single blackened sheet, he manages to convince the crowd. Mrs. Crudstaff happily informs the audience that they will put the innovative pencil into mass production. On the way home, Timothy refuses to tell his parents what happened to his leaves. In the evening, a strong wind picks up outside again, causing fallen tree leaves to swirl in the air. Sensing a storm approaching their house, the boy finally decides to tell his parents the truth. He confesses that he didn't say anything before because there's no way of changing anything. The couple surmises that their son will disappear as soon as all the leaves have fallen off his leg. At that moment, the last leaf falls at his feet. The parents rush to their son in tears, begging him to stay. In parting, the boy tells them that they are ready to let him go. With the first stroke of lightning, the house lights go out, and Timothy Green vanishes into thin air. The desperate couple run into the yard and dig out the hole from which their magic son popped out of. In his place, they find the wishing box, which is whole again. At this point, Cindy and Jim Green's story comes to an end. They hand Mrs. Zone the letter they found in the box. After reading it, she leaves the room. In his final message, Timothy reveals that he has given away the fallen leaves to all those whose lives he has managed to touch. He gave one to Brenda to learn how to rock. The second, he put in Uncle Bob's pocket, who passed away with a happy smile on his face. The third he pinned to a portrait of Bernice Crudstaff, who was able to see her true beauty. The fourth he gave to the coach, who gave him a chance to prove himself. The fifth went to Reggie because he really liked leaves. The sixth was found in his car by Big Jim when he decided to look at a picture of him and his son together. From the last 2 leaves, he made earrings, which he gave to Joni. The Green spouses were rewarded by Timothy with the confidence that they could be great parents despite all the mistakes they would make. A few months later, an adoption agent drives up to the Greens' house with a little girl who is to become their daughter. The little girl introduces herself as Lily and goes to her new home with a happy couple. What qualities would you bestow on your ideal child if given the opportunity? We await your answers in the comments. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel.